Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thanks for being here. Uh, Welcome to this video and podcast. As you should know by now, you can find audio transcriptions of all of these videos online with your podcast provider. It's all over. So on your phone or wherever you can download it, listen to it later. For a lot of people, that's more convenient. But I will continue to make these videos as long as I'm able. Your support goes a long way for me to be able to do this. So thank you. Thank all of you. All right. This Gosho is replying to the lay priest Soya. So he's talking again to an educator that he's wanting to educate on fundamentals of Myoho Renge Kyo and the philosophy, the ultimate philosophy of Buddhism, the teaching of Buddhism. But of course, he's going to talk to a priest or monk, should say monk, a lay monk, a Nyudo, rather differently than he would just an ordinary person, somebody who hasn't taken tincture at that time. Today, as you've heard me say before, monk simply means dedicated student. So you and I are monks because we are dedicated to the study of Buddhism. But in the 13th century, a monk was still considered somebody who took life vows and lived a life separate from society. Although there's beginning to be a difference, because to call him a lay monk indicates that he lives amongst the populace, or may not interact all the time, but he lives within the populace. Whereas centuries prior, a monk was somebody who was lived in a private community away from the public. In fact, in early Buddhism, that was a requisite because there just were too many distractions to get people to understand how to focus and concentrate their minds. So that was the reason for monks being in monasteries and in the early years of Buddhism, simply because the early teachings were trying to train people to raise their capacity so that they could develop the kind of focus needed to really watch the inner workings of the human mind. Simply wasn't a common practice, certainly in those days, to simply turn inward. Everything was about the powers around you, right? The deities, gods, forces of nature, and so forth, and pleading with them. Shakyamuni was a huge revolutionist in that respect, is that he taught people that this is going on in your mind and you can control it. This is a very short Gosho, so we'll get right into it, but you'll see how laser focused this is. And also, as I recall, this note gives this lay monk the basis for Gongyo, why we do Gongyo the way that we do. He said, Nichiren talks about it elsewhere, but it's very clear which chapters, what to recite each day. So let's just get into it. Nichiren begins. I have written out the prose section of the expedient means chapter for you. You should recite it together with the verse portion of the lifespan chapter, which I sent you earlier. So there it is. The characters of this sutra are all without exception living Buddhas of perfect enlightenment. But because we have the eyes of ordinary people, we see them as characters. For instance, hungry spirits perceive the Ganges River as fire, human beings perceive it as water, and heavenly beings perceive it as Amrita. Though the water is the same, it appears differently according to one's karmic reward from the past. And this is a reference to the manifest body, the reward body, and the Dharma body. And so what he's saying is, although we read all of these characters, Remember, they're not using words, they're using characters, which are representations of concepts taken together and in context with one another. That's a far more, not really abstract, but abstract in the sense that each character communicates an idea rather than, like English, a specific note of identification. English is a much more, if you'll apologize for the analogy, a mathematical language rather than a poetic or artistic or expressive language. In order to express through English, we have to amass a great deal of words in order to convey a certain idea. We can try to shorthand that into a word, but it generally doesn't work very well. Whereas characters, since Sanskrit, and even if you're into Egyptology and cuneiform and all of those early forms of writing, and as they became more sophisticated throughout Asia and the Middle East, were much more concerned with the ideas they were conveying than they were with stapling down actual dissected identification of, what do I want to say, not even components, but constituents of thoughts leading to the perception of ideas. See, language wasn't like that then. So even today in Asia, although they've gotten much more detailed with their characters, still talk more conceptually, more poetically than we do in the West. So when he talks about the letters, the characters, I'm sorry, in the sutra, he's indicating that the characters we can dissect as characters that are pictograms of this and that assembled to convey this idea. But remember that the characters were created with a meaning beyond the strokes on the page, a meaning that was more conceptual and, I would say, personalized, because there was a recognition that each person would understand each character through their own lens of life experience. We don't do that so much with words. We talk about that concept far more removed from the actual words. We do talk about it in terms of ideas, but when it comes to documenting it, there's a great deal of distance between the words, the page, and the ideal or the idea being understood or transmitted, right? So, what Nichiren is alluding to is here the characters of the sutra are each imbued with the idea of achieving Buddhahood in this moment, in this life right now. Whereas you can't say that about words, literally. Follow? So he's telling this fellow teacher who's going to convey these ideas to his students, the Sangha, that the characters of the sutra are all, without exception, living Buddhas of perfect enlightenment. So, what I said earlier. But because we have eyes of ordinary people, we see them only as characters. So the same is true of this mandala behind me. The concepts that are assembled on that mandala by Nichiren are each and every one a manifestation of the Dharma, but conceptually more of a bridge to ordinary minds to attain that Dharma. And so then that becomes the reward. By practicing, invoking, and learning, we take our manifested body and achieve a reward of enlightenment, the Dharma body. It all happens in an instant, right? So that's what this paragraph is about. The next one, he continues, the blind cannot see the characters of this sutra. To the eyes of ordinary people, they look like characters. Persons of the two vehicles perceive them as the void. Bodhisattvas look on them as innumerable doctrines. And this is what you've heard me say over and over and over again. Buddhas recognize each character as a golden Shakyamuni. So as bodhisattvas, we understand the depth of meaning behind these characters of the mandala and the characters within the Lotus Sutra, and of course Gongyo, the Daimoku, the title, the essential umbrella of the ultimate teaching, Myoho Renge Kyo. We understand that that sits atop thousands of years of scholarship. But as a Buddha, when you're enlightened, even that falls away and you simply understand Buddha. You understand that simply by looking at the mandala, you understand that every single portion of it is itself enlightenment. And that's what we're all shooting for, right? He goes on, this is what is meant by the passage that says, quote, if one can uphold this sutra, one will be upholding the Buddha's body, end quote. Those who practice with distorted views, however, are destroying this most precious sutra. You should simply be careful that without differing thoughts, you single-mindedly aspire to the pure land of Eagle Peak. A passage in the 6 Paramitta Sutras says, to become the master of your mind rather than let your mind master you. I will explain in detail when I see you. With my deep respect, Nichiren. So, as I said, this is a brief Gosho. If you're not familiar with the Paramittas, again, this is a source for study. There's a small note here that says that a sutra translated from Sanskrit to Chinese in Prajna of the Tang dynasty, it explains in detail the 6 kinds of practices or perfections, the Sanskrit Paramitta, that bodhisattvas must carry out in order to attain enlightenment. And I'm not going to get into it any deeper than that. You can research that for yourself. That is very interesting. And it also helps increase your confidence in your practice, because you'll see that thousands of years ago, documentation of what bodhisattvas practice was in fact detaching from mundane earthly existence. So it's very informative that way. The royal palace is next. I think a key statement. Well, the Gosho is so brief that the whole thing. Excuse me. The whole breathe. The whole thing is a critical statement. Right there you have the 3 bodies, which we all experience when we practice. Certainly the 3 bodies of Buddha, but that's not a person, so that's the Buddha that we all experience. The structure of Gongyo, telling this young monk that to center his own life is critical in his understanding and his ability to help others, Bodhisattva way, and that he will be, because he is now in the position to teach others, he will be confronted with occasional negativity and questions from others who do not understand the depth of the teaching, and that he should be careful in how he approaches that. And how to defend himself is Gongyo, Daimoku, and understanding the relationship of the Dharma body, the reward body, and the manifest body, right? But do Gongyo is the main message. In other words, get your mind straight. You should be controlling and driving your life, not this incredible human samsaric mind of attachments and distinctions and categories and just festering little fields of monkeys screaming at you. Don't let that control your life. Let your life, with your daimoku, your gongyo, your Buddha nature, control your life, and thereby rein in the monkeys and control your mind, your perception. Because perception, controlling the mind is controlling your perception, is what leads to Buddha wisdom and the experience of Buddha-ness, your Buddha, right? It's all about perception. Perception, attitude, perception, intent. Intent comes from perception. Intent has attitude also formed of the monkeys. You don't want the monkeys forming your intent and your attitude. You want your practice, your Buddha nature, to control your attitude and your intent. Okay? Anyway, with that, this is a short one. Have a great day. Take care of your health. Deeply appreciate your support in any way you can, including watching these videos or downloading podcasts. Thank you for that. It's becoming very popular, and so that pleases me greatly. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. We'll see you in the next one.